Hi everyone, this is Art Serna. I just had a terrific conversation with Kim in the show. We explored so many topics from astronomy to purpose in life to my family story. I just encourage you to take a listen. We go into the future of education, young people, how to be a mentor, what does it mean to be an unknown, but most importantly, how to gain hope if you are in that unknown season and you're struggling with feeling overlooked and not seen. I really encourage you to listen to this episode because I believe you're going to be encouraged that it could actually be a real gift to you and just preparing you for something tremendous in your life. So thank you, Kim, for having me. I look forward to listening to the episode myself, and thank you for being part of this community.
Welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here. You are going to be so happy you're here. I'm Kim Sorrelle. I speak, I write, I get to do so many fun things in life. But my favorite thing to do by far is to meet people. And I get to meet some of the most extraordinary people that walk on the face of this earth. And today I have Art with me. He's so multifaceted that it was hard for me to come up with a real great description of him because he's done so many things in his life, including authoring books, and he's in business, but he's in church and he's in leadership and he's in, I don't know, doing all kinds of things with schools, things that I cannot wait to dive into and talk about. So let's get started. Art, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Excited for this space that we're going to create together. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so let's start early on. I want to hear about 8-year-old Art.
That's a great time in my life. I was in navigating the change from worlds. So a lot of the what I write about, what we'll hear about in this episode, is that journey of moving from one world that you thought you knew to a completely different world. So we were moving from Mexico I was born in Texas, but lived and grew up in Mexico. So we were moving from that place to what became our home, Texas, South Texas. And really thinking back, I was deeply impacted by the life of my maternal grandfather. So he was a farm worker, worked on both sides, never learned to read, but he had deep encounters with God at that time in his life. He was deep into alcoholism. It ravaged his family, but he had this encounter with God, and it changed him forever in the Catholic Church. And that, I think, looking back at 8-year-old Art, that really shaped me in ways beyond ways I actually understood till this part of my life, looking back. So yeah, there was a lot going on in little Art back in the day. Lots of change, lots of reimagining, learning a new language, adapting to a new culture.
Yeah, not an easy thing. So that's about the time then that you moved to Texas. When was your grandfather's encounter with God? When did that happen?
Yeah, that would have been the latter part of his life. So his kids were grown, um, and he was now near retirement for him. But one of the cool stories that sticks with me is that the I mean, marriages were different back then. People played different roles, but my grandmother would sit and read the Bible to him. And one of the gifts that we kind of inherited from him is because he couldn't do that himself. He learned the power of meditating on truth, right? So he had to remember, and he had to take nuggets of that and meditate on it for a long time to retain it. So yeah, I think even later in life, I remember sitting down with him many a time and him kind of speaking from that treasure chest of wisdom about those concepts of, for him, it was scripture, really communion with the word. It is that he is the word, God, Jesus is the word alive. And so he was fellowshipping with that truth, and it transformed them into very peaceful men who gave kind of the shirt off his back, who would go about in the community. And at his when he passed, Kim, there was so many people from Mexico that came out for his funeral. It was in the border town of Laredo, because they had such a great view of his life, and I guess the testimony, the legacy that he left. And as I think of, my kids are still in high school, but I think about, I want to leave a legacy that's similar, that's not internally focused but externally focused. How can we improve humanity?
Wow. Wow, that's so cool. I love it that this is how you talk about your grandpa, and that this is what he meant in your life, because not everybody gets that experience with a grandfather. And so when you moved to the US, did he move also?
Yeah, so actually, a lot of my family over time ended up being ending on this side of Texas. You know, they took the citizenship test. Took years for many of them, but eventually all of them received it, and he passed in the Laredo border. So I grew up in McAllen, Texas. That's further down, closer to the Gulf. But my uncle had a business. So there's a journey on entrepreneurship in the family, and so he was that uncle, and so he had moved. He was college educated, uh, his son, and had started a business in Laredo. So that's where my grandfather spent some time. But then he got closer to us just the last part of his life near McAllen because my mom and all the aunts. My mom was one of 11, and so all of the aunts were closer to where we were, closer to the Gulf, and that's where my grandfather had an apartment up by himself, and they all took turns to care for him. So that picture, me growing up of kind of this hub of family still sticking together, caring for their elderly. It was a beautiful picture to see. I mean, you got all the challenges with, eventually in life you need home care, all of those things. But it was great to be able to see that they were taking turns to care for him in the latter part of his life, and how much he meant to all of us.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. What a legacy, and family, to learn family, to see family that way is just so cool. I just love it that everybody worked together. That's the way it should be. I believe, we should take care of
Yeah.
each other and our families for sure. So 8 years old, you have to learn English. You're going to school. What was that like? That had to be tough. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, no, it was tough. It was, you feel awkward. It wasn't. And I share the story about like just the simple. We had this plastic cup that stayed in my mind as a child. It just had a happy face on it, and it "Have a happy day" was the slogan in it. But even that, I couldn't say that. It was hard. The
Mm.
vowels were different, like syllables, all that sentence structure was different. And it was that I think the power of it. And so in some ways, we'll weave this concept of the unknown, right? In some ways, you feel unknown, you feel invisible, right? Because you don't really fit in. And so in my, in the experience of my grandfather, right, the concept of, working in the field, in some ways, nobody knows where stuff comes from sometimes, but he got it done, right? He's in the field working, and that fruit you're getting, he was there. He was unknown in a sense, but you couldn't have what you had without him. And in the same way, when I think about language, many times you can feel unknown when you can't quite, nothing makes sense. And so yeah, but I would tell you, Kim, the good thing was that because we were in South Texas, I was fortunate to still have folks that looked like me and that spoke two languages even before I could do that. So Ms. Gonzalez was my first teacher, fourth grade, and she was wonderful, wonderful. I think it was my first American crush, I'll be honest. But yeah, she was a wonderful lady, very nice, and learning fractions and all of those things. Eventually, like within a new language, and just the multiplication tables with her was exceptional. It really helped me, but it was deeply challenging. I think at points in those early years, there was a lot of teasing, and you would try to say stuff and it wouldn't come out right, and then there were those. Some people are just not nice at that age, especially. But it gave us a thick skin, I think, to dwell
Yeah.
and to continue to press on, become resilient.
Yeah. Well, and you're forced to learn the language quickly.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you? Like, so that was fourth grade. What was fifth grade like?
Yeah, so we started at one school. My dad actually he was also learning the language just in the workplace because he was had started as a butcher in a local kind of grocery store, and eventually he found his way to become an assistant to a chef of a local Hilton, right? Doing big banquets. So he was an assistant there. And so he was learning the language, and eventually he got steady enough where they could rent a home in Texas. And then so after that, we started there, and then they eventually saved enough to purchase their first home, and which became our home, and that's where we grew up, and our middle school and high school. But so after that, we moved to a different school. That was harder. The teacher wasn't the same. She was just didn't speak the Spanish language. It was just different. But at the same time, I take it now as a gift because it really pushed me right to accelerate the learning process. But then eventually we landed in South Texas where we would be for the fifth grade, and I'm a one of three, so I have a twin brother, not identical, but we were very close, always been. And then we have a younger brother, and he was only 11 months after us. So my mom, got all three boys within a very short time frame. There's 30 or so days, so we're all the same age, so we're nearly triplets. So we grew up very close, the three of us, and so we're all going through this journey together. That was a gift as well because I wasn't doing it alone. And so by fifth grade, I was put in a bilingual. So we would classroom. So there were points that we would read literature in Spanish, and then English. It would switch. And I don't know. I don't recall the dynamics of it at the time, but there was not very long after we were in that school, a decision was made, and I was put into a full immersion classroom, um, and full English. And my twin brother actually had fallen a little bit behind. My twin brother, so when we moved to that school, he was a year behind. But I guess they could tell that he was pretty quick, strong. He was very intelligent, and so he got bumped, and then he got put in the same room as I was. And eventually, that group became the top 10 in that school as we went through middle school, high school. That group was, when you look at the top 10, we were all kind of started in that classroom
Wow.
together.
Wow. Wow. That's so good. I mean, to go from where you were to top 10 is pretty darn awesome, I would say. So
Yeah.
yeah, so good for you. I've got a son-in-law from Mexico. He was 12, I believe, when he moved
Mm,
to Chicago
mm.
and had to learn the
Much bigger
language.
city, much bigger
Yeah,
city.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And grew up working full time while going to school full time, even as a 12-year-old, as a 9-year-old back in
Mm.
Mexico, as a young kid in Mexico, but then in the US, all through middle school, all through high school, he worked 40 hours a week plus went to
Wow.
school. And there were nine
Yeah.
kids in the family, but the family needed the money. And so
Yeah.
they all worked. And there's something I think incredible about the Mexican culture that I think we miss here quite
Mm.
often is that we're all in this together kind of feeling. We're a family, that real
Yeah.
family. That it's
Right.
a family, and that
Yeah.
word family should be so much bigger than what
Yeah.
we let it be sometimes. And so I have so much respect for my son-in-law. He's fantastic. I love him, love him, love him. And he's an incredible husband to my daughter and father. I mean, he's just
Mm.
such a great guy. And he works. I mean, that's what he was
Is
training
he
to
still
do.
in Chicago? Is he still in
No,
Chicago?
they moved from
Oh,
Chicago to Michigan to like
okay.
southern
That's
Michigan. Yeah,
too
Sturgis.
far. Not too far from Milwaukee.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
adjacent. Okay, I'll
I
have
know
to meet
we're
him sometime.
neighbors. Yeah, we're neighbors. I'm in Grand Rapids. I'm in West Michigan, so I'm just across the water
Okay.
from you. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
good.
So yeah, but I just have such great respect for the culture and the work ethic and the family. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a whole different dynamic. I just love it. So
Yeah.
anyways, yeah.
I say I got put a special place in my heart for just, I mean, obviously I grew up, I was born within that culture, and it's like, well, I can't, that's just, God decided that's what I was to be. So I grew in the culture, but I have this deep heart for the Latin American culture and Latin American nations, and to see them thrive in time. I got a minor in Latin American studies, it was trying to better understand who I was, when I went to the University of Texas. So in all of that, I say right now, part of the work that I'm doing today, and we could come back to, but I just mentioned it because I'll forget it. But that Latinos at this point in America, they're three times more likely to start a business. And I think that is powerful. And I think something I think gives me hope for the future, that they're by life experience, I think the connection they feel to family and to provide. Sometimes we may lack the resources, the knowledge at times. But I think as that gets disrupted and we get access to resource and social capital, I mean, golly, so many women, Latinas who are doing that work and starting businesses and very entrepreneurial. So in all of that, I say I'm grateful for who I am and the fact that I was born in this generation to do this work. It's so much opportunity to do incredible things in the world nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, so true. So true. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Three times more likely. Wow, I did not know that. That is a huge number. That's and I can see it. I mean, my word, you're gonna work hard, might as well work for yourself. Sometimes can be the idea, and to build your own legacy, to build your own uh way of life, how you want to see it is. I'm an entrepreneur, so I know what it's like to be able to create your own destiny. And so that's awesome. I love it that it's three times. That's cool. That's pretty cool. So did you know when you were in school, did you know what you wanted to do when you after graduating high school?
Well, I wanted to be an architect since I was a kid for years. I would draw. I mean, I wasn't a very good artist, but I would draw. Like, 'cause I think I felt this burden that I wanted to give back to my parents and my mom. They were very, they had us very young. My mom would have been 21 or so. My dad was about 19. And so we disrupted their future in some way. And they worked incredibly hard. I'm grateful for these years for them that they get to, they're now retired, living with my brother, but they're enjoying each other, enjoying life. But they worked so hard, Kim, for us, and that was part. Like I say later in the book, like that when my dad first read the book, it was my mom sent me a picture of him sitting in his chair, leaning chair, and he was reading my book. And for me, it was like the first entrepreneur is reading, this and he did so many things. But yeah, they just been so amazing. So I want to be an architect because I wanted to build my mama house. But and I thought about that for many years. I got a lot of access to individuals like social service type of groups, Gear Up and others that starting like in middle school, they started like pulling us out and going like, you will go to college and just filling us with that concept of what it was, supporting my parents to even understand what that was. And a lot of my summers going into high school, I didn't have a summer because I was doing college level programs and being pulled out and doing things, but that's what was needed, I guess, for us to have confidence, to actually measure up to that we were doing calculus, those type of things. But I thought I was going to be an architect, and thankfully to my counselor at the time, I went to Texas A&M University, my somewhere before my senior year, to spend like a week with their graduate architecture students. And basically at the end of that week, a graduate student told me like, "Hey, if you don't love it, I would do it."
Mm.
At the time, they had to, spend their own money to buy a lot of their models for stuff like that, things like that. And I actually found it deeply frustrating. I said, "You know what? That's not what I want to do." The bottom line, I came back to really think through. I love math at the time. I enjoy that. I love learning about new things. I was fascinated by new tech. And so it just in a classroom, we're looking at booklets of like careers and just what could I do and like read for hours and find deep like intellectual challenge in it as well as appealing to like that would be beautiful. And I ended up choosing astronomy as my BA. I just felt like technology was limiting what we could know about the origins and the future of the universe, and that books would be rewritten. And I just found that deeply appealing. So that's what I did as an undergrad. I thought I was going to be an architect, but I would say in some ways I am an architect. It's just in a different way. So if you were to take a personality profile of like, how do I describe art? You started to try to make that like, at the beginning. And I use that word a lot, an architect, because I don't just like to design or envision a strategy. I get deep meaning from actually seeing something constructed and built, whether that's an individual or a group of people or city or young people, or that's why the passions that I have are multifaceted, because the problems that I see and the pain points are multifaceted. And having worked with young people based my entire career in the K-12 space in different angles and facets of it, I see the challenges are deep. And so therefore it inspires me to want to go build. Because my grandfather, I'll say this and turn it back to you, but my grandfather, he had this deep, because of his encounter, and I would say it was a spiritual encounter. It wasn't the Catholic Church. Some people would define it as the charismatic stream of the Catholic Church at the time. And so he got introduced to like the power of God, the spirit of God, and it transformed him as an individual. But in that, he would go about communities that lacked a chapel, like a local community that didn't have a place to gather and to worship. And so he would compel the men in the town to come together and basically from a construction background, like literally build something so that the neighborhood would have a place of gathering, a place of worship. So in some ways, I say I'm an architect, just not in the way I thought I would be.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you come by it naturally, obviously. So that's kind of cool too. Yeah. Wow. Well, so it kind of sounds like you're looking at the book saying, well, what should I be? And you just stopped at the letter A and
Uh,
didn't go beyond there, apparently. But how did that work out for you? Like that education, what has that done for you? How did you like that program?
yeah, uh, in some ways, I felt the burden as a firstborn. There was so much pressure in it, and that's part of the best and the worst of it. Coming from an experience where the family is put so much in the community and the teachers have put so much in good to like help you succeed, that I guess some of the hustle culture of the American experience, without knowing, was a part of it. And I don't like, I wouldn't change it, but it's a reality to become better, right? To really get go. Why are you like you look around at some point in life, like, why am I doing all this, right? Like, what? And for what? But in that point, the school we went to in high school was a small school, but exceptional in terms of caring for us. And they put all their hopes and dreams, in us. And I was valedictorian of my class. My twin brother he was almost valedictorian. He was number three. And then Frank, who was our younger brother, was top 10 when he graduated. So in all of that, we were very fortunate to get a full ride at the University of Texas. So I could just focus on like the deal. So astronomy, I loved it. I mean, I got to marvel at the Stars Telescope in Austin, Texas, and actually my dream was to go to one of the ancient astronomy. So I got permission to through one of my advisors to be allowed to take a graduate level course in astronomy. Sadly, it was canceled. There was not enough interest to make the class, so I couldn't do it. But we would have gone to and explored places like in Mexico that have ruins and ancient astronomy, I guess, naked eye astronomy. And I thought it was like going to be the pinnacle and fascinating. What I did find out was because, and maybe it was the culture shock, a lot of the individuals that I was seeing in the astronomy program didn't really look like me. Many of them had like long hair. They were like physics. They were on a path. And it was kind of intimidating. I think going now, what I would tell my younger self is like, keep at it. Like if it's really your passion, you're going to be fine. But I was committed to finish the degree. I did. I thought I would say, well, okay, I'm not gonna go do research in astronomy. That's not necessarily like what inspires me in it, although I'm fascinated by the subject matter still. But I knew I wasn't gonna go get a master's in astronomy at some point there. So I said, maybe it's journalism, and the journalism department said, you're all like baked in, you would lose credits, like just finish. So I did, but somebody told me, a very wise person there in Austin at one point, said really connected the like the astronomer as kind of the ancient seeker of truth,
Mm.
right? And said that's really what motivates you. Like you're a seeker of truth, and just like those ancients, like look for the sign, right? Like in all of that. So that really stuck with me. That I'm like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. But I still follow all of that. We're going back to the moon this week for the first time in like almost half a century. So that's incredible. So I think that sometimes when you're stuck in the grind of life, you're so focused, in front of you, that it's a good reminder for me to look up. The heavens declare the glory of God. It's just a quick reminder every time I see the moon, like, okay, good. Like those things have been there and they still do what they're supposed to do. Like
Right.
you're going to be okay. And that's I think one of the best lessons I got from that degree, and I still it reminds me to put things in perspective.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I love going to planetarium. And that one of the things that's so special to me, if I don't fall asleep, because once in a while that has happened, I
Yeah, it's
gotta
so
admit,
comfortable. Yeah.
it is so comfortable. But just the immensity. Like I went one time and it started on Earth and then it just kept going back farther away from Earth and farther away from Earth. It wasn't long before you couldn't see it. And it kept going and it kept going and it kept going and it kept going and going. And I just thought, wow,
Yeah.
the majesty of God. Holy cow, we are but a speck. Like the things that we can get upset about or that can rock our world, it's a little blip and it doesn't uh, we shouldn't make such big things out of such small things when we know that God is in control, when we know that we can rely on God, that He is there for us, and that He created all of this and it's gigantic, like it's
Yeah.
beyond measure. And so, yeah, I know that feeling when you can just look up and go, holy cow, what am I thinking? Like, calm down, Kim, everything's going to be okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally get
Exactly.
it. Yeah. I have a son who works for NASA, by the way. So yeah, yeah. So he's involved in all that fun stuff. But yeah, because Artemis is going this year. I mean, lots of cool things are happening there. But I love that. I love the exploration. I love that we have the ability to do that, but also that we want to. There are people that want to know more, that are seekers like you, that are like, where's the more? There's always more. You're never going to be at a point where you go, I know everything now. I'm settled. I'm all
Yeah.
set because now I know
And
everything.
one of the most helpful things in life was to realize that was put in me. It was outside of me, that God in His goodness put that in my DNA, and to know that it wasn't for like profit, like that hustle culture, I call it. And that was very liberating, Kim, to realize that, so that I could treasure that and not like be condemnation about the pursuit of many things. But to realize, that you always got to put the guardrails, but to be fascinated by beauty, to understand that even as you look upon the stars and galaxies, like it speaks of love. Because when you, again, not to geek out on the thing, but the concept of this blue little shell of a planet that's small in this vast creation, and the fact that they all do, and the placement of each of those, and the gravitation just right, distance just right. It's just incredible. Like it's so um I don't know. It centers me on purpose, and like that I know that I know that I know, and to have that clarity, and second of all, to know that I am a son, a child of God, creating in His image, to continue the process of creation, architecting the beauty in whatever it is, or whatever field. And so I don't feel called to one specific thing anymore. It's just like the treasure of individuals, having worked with young people that were experiencing very deep losses in life, either, on the pathway to, juvie and et cetera, and just pathways that were not going to be helpful to them. But having this deep burden to say, I see beyond that. I see something. I see treasure in there. And let's help. Let's one, elevate your perspective and then launch into that future. And uh, that's part of what I feel called to do now, and why this chapter of like I want to go speak about this message, not just in America, but across the world, of like this concept of the unknowns rising, because I think it is a call in a world of where, at least in the United States, many young people are like the whole youth mental health. You hear that terminology, crisis, that they need an alternative, they need a purposeful message, and they need people modeling that. So
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's I don't know, one thing that I hear people say sometimes, like people my age, oh my gosh, I'm glad I'm not having kids now, or people a little bit um but I heard that when I was having kids from people that were older than me. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm not having kids now. And it seems to be this thing. And it's like I kind of look at it the opposite. I kind of look at it as now is, man, if you're a kid now, the world is more your oyster than ever before.
yeah,
And so if there are ways to help kids that, because yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of mental health issues, but there has to be a solution. And there are kids that are unfortunately getting involved with the wrong groups and the wrong things, but there has to be a better solution than what we've been providing. And even just looking at the schools, what is it, and homes, like what is it that we should be doing differently? What could we be doing differently to really support youth and help them to not make the wrong choices, help them make the right choice, help them to see beyond today, see beyond tomorrow. And so I love it that you're in that space, and that you're creatively thinking in that space, not just kind of the same old, but hey, there's something we can do. So I'd love for you to talk about that.
yeah. So I know firsthand what we talked earlier, that education for our family, changed the trajectory of our family in about one generation, really two. If you take my, you know, mom and dad, they did the work, they got it this far, and then all three boys now with a college education, like just got it even farther. And not that it's all about economic gain, but it's about agency. What do you want to do in life? And you actually have the capability, the knowledge, and the networks to do that. Um, and it was limiting, right, one generation back, but now we got access to more. My kids now have access to much more, right? I think that the tools that are now available, I mean, many people are just afraid of new stuff. Maybe astronomy prepared me, like, because you couldn't, like, even unless you have a good enough telescope, you can't like truly marvel at the beauty. But once you have it, you're like, oh my gosh, let me build the next one. We need a bigger telescope. Like, oh my gosh, I want to see more. And that inspiration, I think, is key in that. A lot of the issue with young people is that they're not inspired enough, right? Like the institutions of education no longer resonate with what God has put in them. And that what motivates me is that in every generation, God puts in the DNA of that generation the capability to handle the burden that they're going to face. It makes sense that a generation from the past says, I would not have kids, or I would not grow, like, but that's fine. Like it's you're not necessarily the one to face that giant, right? But God put in David what he needed to face Goliath from the beginning, right? And he put in the Israelites the ability to leave Egypt, even though they grumbled over it, but he put it in them the capability to get it done if they were willing to say yes to that call for them. And so I feel like young people in this generation, like my children, God has put in them one, the curiosity, the ability to like sustain the greatest technological shift in like ever really in humanity's history, because the pace of the change is like doubling, like gosh, several times a year, and that's like unheard of, right? So in that, having that power, I think they've been wired to do that, but it's not like David needed Samuel. He needed others to come around him. Joseph needed people in his pathway. All of those ancient patriarchs of faith, right? They needed people in their life to help them. So I feel like a lot of times the institutions of education, Kim, are become too big or too focused on the masses. They miss the individual. And the beauty of God is in the individual, and they miss that many times. So I, but it's really hard to change such a massive system. But I think there's going to be innovations in smaller settings and micro schools where parents get more empowered support to be like, hey, how could we do this differently, and really help young people think very deeply about critical questions to the future of humanity. What does it mean to be human? Right? And those getting back to those deep questions. What does it be to be an imager of God? Because you sort of need that, and they will need that more than ever when mankind is creating intelligence that surpasses the analytical capability of humanity. They're going to need that perspective to say, but you are that it's a tool, and you're still an imager, and therefore you are this unique being in yourself that is will never be superseded by that. It just can't happen. But you also need to be evolving. You also need to be growing. So in all of that, your question. So how do we think about this? I think research shows that every child needs just one adult in their life. It doesn't have to be a parent. It gets often better if that's the case, but just one adult in their life that shows the meaning, that is willing to be, that adult is on a path of adventure themselves, and growing and ever evolving, and bringing kind of this. I hear this term a lot now in the concept of reinvention in a lot of spaces, co-creation. Like you're co-designing, co-building with the next generation. I'm actually had the pleasure of heading over to Illinois to meet with one of my mentees, who's actually I speak about in the book, and spending time with him. He's a junior in high school, and so his mom is coming, and we're gonna just talk life and life plans, and just try to invest to say, hey, here's what the future could look like for you. What do you want to do? And just go through a process of getting to clarity of purpose, and like, who are you uniquely? And what would it mean? So, because I think it's important, and I've learned this, that many times we try to get ahead of the plan, and we're not ready. Our character isn't fully developed, and so to have an influence, you're not ready for. So, the hiddenness of the unknown, I think, is a gift sometimes, because you're not ready to handle the burden of the public weight of what will come in your influence. And I had to learn that the hard way, that there was so much good going on. The valedictorian, and like this graduate with honors, all of that, all this piling up, but internally, like, who I was to be, which is beautiful, and in the Lord, that wasn't fully yet where I needed to be. And so now I feel like there's so much power in being unknown, but coming to a place where, like this moment of Joseph, right? That he's in prison, and he's got dreams to greatness of saving a nation. But later, could he say this to his brothers? You didn't do this to me. God willed it that you would. And to say, oh my gosh, how could you even say that, right? Like, I learned that to be able to look at something devastating like a career loss or collapse, or something like that, where you drew all of your being, like your titles, your influence, your relationships, that people define you a certain way. You are the CEO of fill in the blank. And when that all leaves, what's left? And in that place, you got to have to ask, who am I, right? Those deep questions. And I realized, obviously, I first anything, I'm a son of God. I'm an imager of God. The circumstances around me doesn't change that. That's a daily thing. You got to walk that reality. But ultimately, I want to be present in the journey of youth, just like that cupbearer was for Joseph. That in the right time, he remembered Joseph and said, it was time. Like, come to Pharaoh. right? And I want to be present in the lives of young people for those moments of truth when they have to say, okay, like you've already been developed. Now, what is in you the world needs? And you need to go forth because when we look at the world, at nations like Cuba, for example, which I've been, and they're a burden in my heart. When things shift, like they need examples, and not that people from the outside have to come in, but because again, God's already put in their heart what he desires, right, for them to become. But I know that I've always needed mentors at key moments in my life to give me direction. So I think there's a ton of opportunity for young people, and that's why part of our heart for my wife and I and our family is this creating those learning environments where young people can be thoughtful to build with this new technology at the same time as they're going in a deep learning process, and we're creating the conditions to put enough pressure to allow that diamond within them, right, to be refined.
Mhm. Yeah, oh my gosh, it's so good. Yeah, absolutely. It is a very interesting time for sure, for sure. And mentors are so valuable and so important. And if, yeah, I always prayed, Lord, put an adult in my kid's life. I wanted so badly always for them to have somebody besides me and my husband, another adult. Because sometimes kids respond differently to parents than they do to another adult, right? And, they might think what you're saying is stupid, and somebody else can say the exact same thing and they think it's genius, right? And so, to have adults that are willing to be that in a kid's life is amazing to me and so necessary. And so, man, anybody out there listening, if you have opportunity to be that to a kid in their life, figure it out. A neighbor kid, volunteering at school, coach, whatever it happens to be. If you can be that to a kid, that's one of the greatest legacies you can leave is even just touching one kid's life. And so we need
Totally.
people like that for sure. And I like the idea of like a smaller school. That's interesting. I've not heard people talk about that, but you see these big schools where kids just get lost. Like it's there. There's some schools in my area that there's a particular school that's gigantic, and I played sports in high school, and I went to a small.
Same,
I only
same.
had 130 kids in my graduating class. It was a small
Mhm.
school, and so everybody, and I was on every team. Like I could play. I
Yeah.
loved it, but in a place where there's thousands of kids, for me to be one of the 10 on the basketball team, probably not going to happen. And so I think about that. I think about the opportunities that I had going to a smaller school that going to a bigger school you don't have. And there's some classes they can offer, there's some things they can do because they're a bigger school, but all in all, I loved my high school experience. Like it was just the right size. Like it wasn't too small by any means, but it sure wasn't too big. And so then we had the opportunities, and the more opportunities kids have to be involved, to do something, to serve, to get outside themselves, to be part of a team, learn teamwork, be part of a club, be part of something, so that they're with other kids, the more opportunities, I think, the better for kids. And so I love that idea of we need to get back to probably some smaller schools and and figure that out. I like that. That's really good. Really good.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Yeah, I mean, and people have been piloting this, and I've got that people have networks of these type of schools, but I'm just this concept of like the Paul and Timothy model in like the New Testament of doing it together. Like we're on this journey, this adventure in our generation, and we're grappling with the realities together, learning together, pushing each other together, and we're becoming better together. I and because I just got the email this morning, so I've had the pleasure of doing a project with my daughter who's an eighth grader, and she's been part of this the AI presidential challenge, and so she was the state champion for Wisconsin in the competition. So that's going to be released today. But
congratulations. That's pretty
yeah,
exciting. Yeah, that's
yeah. So
awesome.
yeah, she'll be in the regionals this week. Um, and I think the goal would be, can we make it to DC? I don't know, but we're trying. And so she's been preparing. So she helped build this app for the foster care children, kids aging out of the foster care system up here, and just the learning of how um, there's about 300 young adults that age out of the foster care system in Wisconsin, and talking to some of them, for example, that they, and sometimes you realize it's actually true, but hearing it directly from them, that sometimes they come out of that foster care system, that level of support, with like nothing but the shirts on their back, and that's it. That's all they got. And they're either 18, depending, some stay longer, but 18 to 24-ish, and they have nothing at times. So what could we do with AI to support that journey, connecting with communities of faith like churches, and creating something very specific? So I think just for me to connect her to that experience, coach her, and then help her think through the implications of it has been phenomenal. And I think those are the moments these micro schools create, like these micro communities where individuals can have some structure to say, I've got something I can give to the next generation. How do we do that matching? So, but yeah, really excited for her. And because again, I feel like their ability for their generation to do incredible things is in there. We just need to help shape it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I love that this is happening for her. I'm going to be following her through regionals and see how she does, and then in DC, because she's going to make it.
Yeah,
But what an incredible thought. So often uh, you think you're alone in the world. It can be so easy to think you're the only one going through what you're going through. And as soon as you connect with somebody else who says, "Hey, I'm right there with you," it changes
yeah,
everything. It changes everything.
yeah,
So to even introduce foster kids to foster kids, like so they can say, "Hey, I'm in the same boat, but I've got this resource, and I met this person," or whatever it is. Just connecting people in any way that you connect them is so wise, and then connecting them to resources and community is just absolutely incredible. There's segments of our society that are kind of left alone or left behind or ignored, and certainly those kids have it tougher than kids that are just in a family their whole lives. And so that's awesome. I love the whole idea that she's doing that. That's so cool. You must be so proud. That's just really cool.
exceedingly proud. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I bet. I can see that the buttons on your shirt are about to burst open.
yeah.
Just so proud. That's awesome. That is so cool. Yeah. So, your dream, tell me your dream, like, because you have so many, and I want you to talk more about your book too. And so I'd love to hear both those things.
So let me say this. So I think that our view of the future uh, impacts our present and how we show up in the world. And so I think for me, the when I go back to the legacy of my grandfather and the seeds that he laid, I feel that he created a new path that was for like somebody come and pick this up, right? You come and take this. And I was one that was willing to say, hey, that I'm actually deeply curious about that. The way that shaped your life and transformed you, right? Like that this spiritual journey you were on that you took hold of, even with the limitations of literacy. And so I took a hold of that in my journey of what we talked about at one point, and it was this journey of becoming deep spiritual encounters through time. And I start the book with one of the most significant ones that I had that I didn't really fully understand. It took me years really to come to really know what was that and what does it mean. But ultimately, it was a view of the future that was to be, of this generation of the unknowns that God was saying in the earth would rise. And I think it's not, when you look at, the biblical history, there are different moments where God allowed leaders like Daniel, leaders like Joseph to arise because he had a purpose in the earth, right? So it's not different than that. But I think that view of the future, and I hope your audience can grasp this, is one of the things that I think God is doing to say, hey, if the fruit of your life in the present is not exuding like love, peace, all of those good virtues, right? You might have to reconsider your view of the future because you're living maybe with an anxiety. So for me, I'm thankful for the spiritual encounter I had when I first arrived in Milwaukee that helped almost stop me in my tracks of what I thought was success and what I was thinking, like building something as a CEO, and got out to stop when it all stopped. And I had to really reflect back. I went back to my journals. Somebody, a mentor of mine taught me to journal throughout my life. So I went back to my journals, pre-COVID, and what was I journaling? And I got to gain a perspective about this concept of a new generation of leaders that would arise. So my dream, if I think it's important to just when you have a supernatural, somewhat mystical experience like that, to not just to marvel at it, but really, I think it's the architect in me to really grapple with what does this mean? Therefore, how should my life change? Because I've been granted the ability to see this. Now what? And I feel as the kind of architect in me to say, okay, I got to develop the infrastructure for that. For Joseph, it was like I see famine. I see 7 years of abundance, and then I see famine. Okay, so I'm going to take the raw material of the Egyptian empire, and I'm going to create policy, understanding, commerce to get it all ready, right? And do that. And I'm in that phase now to see now that I've seen this, what does it look like to prepare myself to have the infrastructure like for these leaders that would arise all over the globe, from like the K-12 experience to those that I believe, and this is, I think, just part of my lens in the world that entrepreneurship is a key factor because I think when you can give people food only and you don't teach them how to like grow their own garden, I think it's limiting. So there's this aspect of the entrepreneur journey that I think is a part of the book and the journey we're on to create a community of learning, like the Unknowns Rising community for young people from the moment that they're just learning to find their purpose in life. But then also the other chapter, Kim, I think there's this powerful dynamic of like learning to build things that create value for humanity. And I think some ways, in some sectors of the educational system, we've lost that we actually are not good at building things anymore, uh, as a general population. And I think it's a real risk when you have to solve things because you get comfortable with the status quo. Uh, but sometimes when you're in a nation like Iran or Cuba, and you got to make with what you got, right? Like you develop certain things and skill sets and an ability to look at problems from a different angle because you're not benefiting from the current system. You got to make it work from the outside. So I that the dream is to build this micro learning environment of schooling and learning at the same time that we're building portfolio of companies, small to medium size, that are applying the technology, say, for example, like a layer of intelligence of artificial intelligence to old business models where it makes sense to say, we're going to create better value for communities and then have the young people actually apprentice and learn how to apply this new technology to different problems all across, agriculture, engineering, entertainment, like really learn how to steward this technology that's in their generation, at the same time that they lose the fear of it because they understand who they are as imagers, right? And then doing that, not just in America, but going to nations that are desiring support for a time until they develop the infrastructure within. So that's the dream, to be about creating new inventions, creating intellectual property that young people can then, once they graduate, they're not just graduating with a piece of paper that says, hey, you graduated, you've met the basics of like arithmetic and all those things, but they actually created real value. And they either graduate with a franchise, intellectual property, or something that they can take and say, I built this. I think that would be powerful.
Wow. Yeah, no kidding. That would be so powerful. Yeah. I love that idea. I hope that that you can make it happen and that people gather around you and the right people come to you and partner with you to make it happen because I mean just I think about like the boost in a kid. So we've gotten so far away from imagination, creativity. Unfortunately, we tend to stifle it in kids
Mm.
and tell them they're not good at a certain thing, or
Yeah.
stop daydreaming, or whatever it happens to be. And what you're talking about takes creativity, takes imagination, takes uh, what's born in us, the what's inside of us, and lets it come out, and in whatever expression that means. And I think, oh my gosh, so valuable for a kid, like life changing. That's just so good. It would, yeah. What
And
a
Kim,
difference.
I would say this. Yeah, I would say this to folks that might be in your audience, um, that if they're like the burden of being unknown or feeling overlooked or feeling invisible, I mean, that's painful. And my hope through the book, The Unknown's Rising, as people read the story, I hope it's encouragement that God sees you. And it could be that he's protecting you, and that unknown season is actually a way to build your inner being, because the the seeds that truly grow are those that have the deepest roots. And you might be in that season where he's developing your root system much deeper. But there will be a day that because you've given yourself to that growth and have the real understanding of the moment that you may be in, that the light will come and your seed will burst through that ground. And that's the journey that we're on, in the journey of the unknowns rising, to support people when they reach that point, or if they just need that encouragement to say, golly, my life has been such a hard season after season after season. I hope they gain some hope from like that. That can actually be something you're being prepared for something phenomenal that this generation will uniquely experience. And that's my hope, to grow hope, and I hope they feel the love. I do appreciate that you care about love, because I think sometimes that hidden place, and it was for me, that hidden place of going from all the accolades to feeling unknown, was really a loving thing. It was a way for God to release something new that was deep within me that I had never allowed to fully surface. And so now I'm getting in my flow of delight more often than the past, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, wow, that's so cool. I'm so glad that you shared that, what you just shared, that because it can be easy to feel like, why me, Lord? Or I'm what he's talking about, that's great, but that's he's not talking to me. And it's like, well, no. I mean, we're all created in his image. We're all children of God. We're all in the same boat. We're all
Yeah.
in the same boat, and we all have our uniqueness that makes the world so beautiful. And so, if you're in a season where it's just roots growing, roots growing, roots growing, and you wonder if you're ever going to see the light of day, you will. It will
Yeah.
happen, but you'll see it in a whole different way because your roots are so deep. I love that whole thing. Is just such a great word for people to hear, that wherever you are in life right now, it's going to change tomorrow. But wherever
Yeah.
you are, embrace it. Embrace today, whatever that season is, embrace it and learn from it, grow from it, and then get excited for what it's going to hold for you for the future. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Such a great word. Yeah. We are so low on time. This has been so fabulous. I could talk to you all day, all night, all day, all night, all day, all night.
Thank you, Kim.
There's somebody I'm going to introduce you to. I can't wait. Nate Turner. If anybody out there knows Nate Turner, good friend of mine. Uh, you share a heart with him, and some compassionate goals. And so I think you and Nate
Thank you.
would be a great meeting. And I just appreciate you so much and everything you're doing. Where can people find you? Where can they find their book?
Yeah, they can go to unknownrising.com. They can take an assessment. If they feel like they're going to be a builder, it helps them really see where are you at really. And then just follow us on Instagram at unknownsrising. that would be great.
Okay. And the book?
The book is on there. It's on Amazon. And if they go to the website, they'll find the link there to get the book.
Okay, awesome. And of course, we'll put all that in the show notes. And I would say this, though, don't just buy a book for yourself. Buy one for yourself, read it, and then buy them and send them out. Like there are going to be people that you know that are going to need to hear this episode, pass it on. And there are going to be people that you know that are going to need this book. And so send it to them. It's a beautiful gift to receive a book in the mail. And it's so easy to do. All you need to know is their address. You don't have to go to the post office. You don't have to do anything. It's just simple. Send it, send it, send it. And let's support art every way that we can. Art, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you everybody for joining us today. And I just want to say that I pray that until we see each other again, that you keep your heart open and you live your love loud.